consequences are disastrous. They have to move to cover point B, no matter what. It is, in any case, almost impossible to doubt the reality of actual troop movements, with all the time and energy those involve. So the decoy attack keeps the enemy dispersed and ignorant of your intentions, the ultimate dream of any general. The decoy attack is also a critical strategy in daily life, where you must retain the power to hide your intentions. To keep people from defending the points you want to attack, you must follow the military model and make real gestures toward a goal that does not interest you. You must seem to be investing time and energy to attack that point, as opposed to simply trying to signal the intention with words. Actions carry such weight and seem so real that people will naturally assume that is your real goal. Their attention is distracted from your actual objective. Their defenses are dispersed and weakened. Camouflage. The ability to blend into the environment is one of the most terrifying forms of military deception. In modern times, Asian armies have proven particularly adept in this art. At the battles of Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima during World War II, American soldiers were astounded at the ability of their Japanese foes to blend into the various terrains of the Pacific theater. By sowing grass, leaves, twigs, and foliage to their uniforms and helmets, the Japanese would merge with the forest. But the forest would incrementally advance, undetected, until it was too late. Nor could the Americans pinpoint the Japanese guns, for their barrels were concealed in natural rock crevices, or were hidden under removable camouflage covers. The North Vietnamese were equally brilliant at camouflage, reinforcing their skills by the use of tunnels and underground chambers that allowed armed men to pop up seemingly anywhere. Worse, in a different kind of camouflage, they could blend into the civilian population. Preventing your enemies from seeing you until it is too late is a devastating way to control their perceptions. The camouflage strategy can be applied to daily life in two ways. First, it is always good to be able to blend into the social landscape, to avoid calling attention to yourself unless you choose to do so. When you talk and act like everyone else, mimicking their belief systems, when you blend into the crowd, you make it impossible for people to read anything particular in your behavior. Appearances are all that count here. Dress and talk like a businessman, and you must be a businessman. That gives you great room to move and plot without being noticed. Like a grasshopper on a leaf, you cannot be picked from your context. An excellent defense in times of weakness. Second, if you are preparing an attack of some sort and begin by blending into the environment, showing no sign of activity, your attack will seem to come out of nowhere, doubling its power. The hypnotic pattern. According to Machiavelli, human beings naturally tend to think in terms of patterns. They like to see events conforming to their expectations by fitting into a pattern or scheme. For schemes, whatever their actual content, comfort us by suggesting that the chaos of life is predictable. This mental habit offers excellent ground for deception, using a strategy that Machiavelli calls acclimatization, deliberately creating some pattern to make your enemies believe that your next action will follow true to form. Having lulled them into complacency, you now have room to work against their expectations, break the pattern, and take them by surprise. In the Six-Day War of 1967, the Israelis submitted their Arab enemies to a devastating and lightning-fast defeat. In doing so, they confirmed all their pre-existing military beliefs. The Arabs were undisciplined, their weaponry was outdated, and their strategies were stale. 6 years later, the Egyptian president Anwar Sadat exploited these prejudices in signaling that his army was in disarray and still humbled by its defeat in 1967, and that he was squabbling with his Soviet patrons. When Egypt and Syria attacked Israel on Yom Kippur in 1973, the Israelis were caught almost totally by surprise. Sadat had tricked them into letting down their guard. This tactic can be extended indefinitely. Once people feel you have deceived them, they will expect you to mislead them again, but they usually think you'll try something different next time. No one, they will tell themselves, is so stupid as to repeat the exact same trick on the same person. That, of course, is just when to repeat it, following the principle of always working against your enemy's expectations. Remember the example of Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Purloined Letter. Hide something in the most obvious place, because that is where no one will look. Planted information. People are much more likely to believe something they see with their own eyes than something they are told. They are more likely to believe something they discover than something pushed at them. If you plant the false information you desire them to have with third parties in neutral territory, when they pick up the clues, they have the impression they are the ones discovering the truth. The more you can make them dig for their information, the more deeply they will delude themselves. During World War I, in addition to the infamous standoff on the Western Front, the Germans and the British fought a lesser-known battle for control of East Africa, where both sides had colonies. The man in charge of English intelligence in the area was Colonel Richard Meinerzhagen, and his main rival on the German side was an educated Arab. Meinerzhagen's job included feeding the Germans misinformation, and he tried hard to deceive this Arab, but nothing seemed to work. The two men were equals at the game. Finally, Meinerzhagen sent his opponent a letter. He thanked the Arab for his services as a double agent and for the valuable information he had supplied to the British. He enclosed a large sum of money and entrusted the letter's delivery to his most incompetent agent. Sure enough, the Germans captured this agent en route and found the letter. The agent, under torture, assured them that his mission was genuine, because he believed it was. Meinerzhagen had kept him out of the loop. The agent was not acting, so he was more than believable. The Germans quietly had the Arab shot. No matter how good a liar you are, when you deceive, it is hard to be completely natural. Your tendency is to try so hard to seem natural and sincere that it stands out and can be read. That is why it is so effective to spread your deceptions through people whom you keep ignorant of the truth, people who believe the lie themselves. When working with double agents of this kind, it is always wise to initially feed them some true information. This will establish the credibility of the intelligence they pass along. After that, they will be the perfect conduits for your lies. Shadows within shadows. Deceptive maneuvers are like shadows deliberately cast. The enemy responds to them as if they were solid and real, which in and of itself is a mistake. In a sophisticated, competitive world, however, both sides know the game, and the alert enemy will not necessarily grasp at the shadow you have thrown. So you have to take the art of deception to a level higher, casting shadows within shadows, making it impossible for your enemies to distinguish between fact and fiction. You make everything so ambiguous and uncertain, spread so much fog, that even if you are suspected of deceit, it does not matter. The truth cannot be unraveled from the lies, and all their suspicion gives them is torment. Meanwhile, as they strain to figure out what you are up to, they waste valuable time and resources. During the World War II desert battles in North Africa, the English Lieutenant Dudley Clark ran a campaign to deceive the Germans. One of his tactics was to use props, dummy tanks and artillery, to make it impossible for the Germans to figure out the size and location of the English army. From high-flying reconnaissance aircraft, these dummy weapons would photograph like the real thing. A prop that worked particularly well was the fake airplane made of wood. Clark dotted bogus landing fields filled up with rows of these around the landscape. At one point, a worried officer told him that intelligence had been intercepted, revealing that the Germans had figured out a way to distinguish the fake planes from the real ones. They simply looked for the wooden struts holding up the wings of the dummy planes. Enlarged photos could reveal this. They would now have to stop using the dummies, said the officer. But Clark, one of the great geniuses of modern deception, had a better idea. He decided